American water polo.
Hi, this is Damon Newman from American Water Polo, and we're here today with Alex Stankevitch to learn some of our best practices from experienced officials on the Behind the Whistle series. How you doing, Alex?
I'm doing well, thank you, Dan. Great
Yeah,
seeing you.
yeah, great seeing you too. It's good to be seen. We were just saying that.
Mhm.
Um, so I really appreciate you taking the time. And so tell me about yourself and how you got started in officiating.
I got started in the East Coast. I got started in 1998, and that was probably the most serious, I guess, practice that I had, where I was scheduled to go and travel to certain places. And I've started out with clubs, and then in a couple of years, maybe I've been mostly doing varsity work. So again, it was fall of '98. It all started in the September Navy's Open, and there was a clinic and a school, referee school, that was ran by Terry Ma, Lauren Bertacci, and Greg Boyer. Before that, I was doing some high school and age group stuff in California, in Santa Barbara area, and a little bit in Merced area, where I went to junior college.
Excellent. Yeah. So you started really seriously, getting into the collegiate club and varsity side on 1998. So I had have been in, I was probably in school at the time
In the school.
at Iona. So that's
I remember you in school, but now all the years run into each other. You know what I mean? I just know you played for Brian. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You had really good teams. I remember a lot of Chicago guys.
yeah, we did.
But what years? I can't remember. Everybody remembers your pool, though.
Yeah.
And as a referee, now you're a referee too. Now you understand what we're talking about, right? It's a
Right.
completely different feeling and view as a player, right?
Yeah, it was. It was. We definitely had a home court advantage. Working on that bottom.
Right.
That's for sure. It's the ultimate equalizer.
Exactly. Well, you didn't have to equalize a lot, but you definitely were a favorite. Almost, you know what, against anyone. You're right. Now
Yeah, we
it
played
takes
some
me
really
back to
tough
those
opponents.
days. Yeah, what a pool, and a crowded pool,
Yeah.
and sometimes rowdy. You think Iona, everything's organized and so on, but then then
Yeah,
the fans show up, or
the fans like to get after it.
and then they go after you. Everyone, including the I thought they were going after opposing players and in teams more than the referees even. That's my feeling.
So
Iona.
So when we get back to to the actual officiating, is it so some of the things you do, a lot of the interviews we're doing here is directed towards, younger officials trying to get into the sport, or maybe even where you were,
Hmm.
in '96 before you got into the varsity side. What are some things you do typically when you arrive on a pool deck, whether you've been there before or maybe if it's even a new pool?
Right. So, well, for collegiate games, you have to be there an hour, maybe 45 minutes before the game. That's the latest. Um, Most of the pool, if not all the pools, I would already know, and I know the course, and I've been there many times. Obviously, in advance, you already know who you're working with.
Right.
So that actually affects what you do before the game. If there's somebody that you can even talk on the way there. Like I would call sometimes some people, if you're in close relationship, then you will actually call and discuss. I'm arriving back then. This is what I just did their game maybe a week ago or a couple of weeks ago, and this is what the tendencies are, and this is what happened. Maybe there's some issues with the benches, coaches. We'll discuss that as well. When we get in the pool, we try to do things as a team, go change together. During that time, we're also discussing what about to happen. What have you done? What have you seen? Have you seen any of these teams? You discuss the coverages, but again, if you know who you're working with, you talk less about the coverages because it's expected. It becomes easy. It becomes part of the. It's not necessarily business, but it's kind of a routine kind of thing.
Right.
It's something that you do, and if something comes up during the game that is unusual, we'll discuss it in between the quarters or on walkie-talkie. I think that's actually a very good help. But maybe we'll get to walkie-talkies later when we talk about communication. But
Right.
before the game, we talk about the game and what we've done prior. What have you seen? What have you heard? And this is what they've done. These are the results that they have. So what we know what's on our hand. But you don't want to be rushed. You want to be there ahead of time and do what you do.
So how would you explain to say you were working with the new official you
Mhm.
hadn't really you met before, or maybe somebody who's like fairly young,
Right.
more of a novice official.
Yeah.
How would that relationship or those conversations be different than say somebody you've maybe worked for over 10 years, exactly where he or she's going to call, the area they're generally looking. What's
Right.
that conversation like to say with somebody you maybe never worked with or somebody that know is a little bit green?
Well, I mean, you're probably talking about before the game, about this game that is coming up,
It could
right?
be like pregame, or even it could be even like maybe what
In general,
collaboration sounds like too.
collaboration. Okay, because there's a reason I ask about this. So about the game, I would say, okay, if I don't know you, it means probably that you're doing something, like you said, maybe a novice official, maybe a less experienced official. I want to make sure that that person knows where I'm looking and where I expect that person to look.
Okay.
And I specifically a lot of times talk about obviously the set play and the transition. I think that because for whatever reason in transition, there's many reasons obviously, but with novice officials, especially if you're not used to, there's a lot of things that happen in transition, and it becomes it looks like a very inconsistent part of the game that is being called inconsistently. And I feel that from a lot of coaches as well. So I said, this is what you should be looking at, turn a certain way, take maybe the first line, I'll take the second, or unless, if there's somebody is already leaving early, maybe I'll say I'll tell the official just to go with that person, and I'll take care of the rest of it. But I want you to be ready because that's where the action is going to happen before I get there. So we'll talk about coverage. I will also ask that official, if I don't really know this official, where have you refereed? What have you done before? Just a couple of questions like that, just to see the level that you've seen. And then if I know this is a varsity play, boys, girls, it doesn't matter, but the intensity will be up. And I've noticed that, and you probably have too, on the men's side, the intensity for every call has a lot more meaning to coaches for whatever reason, and the animosity one 50-50 call from a novice official can create a lot of animosity and problems in the game. Okay. So I wouldn't just talk to that official. I would also talk to the coaches. If you have any issues or you want to scream about something, let me know, and then I'll deal with this. I'll ask what the problem was, or I'll tell you, I'll ask that person what he or she saw, and then I'll explain.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
You know what I mean? So the coaches know that this is a newer referee. We don't want to discourage these officials who are taking their time. They're not here, again, like you'll probably hear me and heard other officials say, that we're not here really for money. This is, we're being compensated for some things, but this is, I hate saying this is a hobby. It's a really like a labor of love, and it's a second job. But whenever people talk about hobby, and I used to say hobby too, and I'm thinking, this is just diminishes a lot of what we do, and that's not how I feel about officiating or about water polo.
Right. You're invested in it. A hobby is something
Yeah.
you feel like you just do on the weekends, right?
Right. No.
But no, this is something where you're studying, you're watching film, and you're being evaluated in certain situations, and you're talking to your partners, you're putting in the time to talk about the team, like you said. What have you seen this team play before? I did a game with them last week, so you're really investing some opportunity and some conversation, and obviously you're working on a lot of different aspects of the game, right? Hand hand signals and really kind of honing your craft.
That's right. So yeah, the hobby is not quite what I would describe it, but literally, I think it's more of a labor of love. So when you love doing something, you become, I think, good at this, and you stick with this. But you have to enjoy it. But it's another thing that I wanted to add, that and not just about a specific game. When you talk to younger officials, you want to tell them that, listen, don't get discouraged right away. Give it a chance. You will be yelled at. There will be some negative things about it. You know what I mean? Obviously, not every, it's not like you're not going to make a mistake. I'm not going to make a mistake, but maybe the same mistake is going to be probably going to look worse on you just because the people don't know you and they think that you don't do a good job because they don't know you. They don't see you, and you know, you got to give it a chance. Kind of step back, don't get upset, and not take things personal. You
Right.
know, game
Right.
is a game. You know.
Yeah, and that certainly is challenging for sure. So you talk a little bit about coaches and officials. You know, you and I have known each other for a number of
Hmm.
years. You know, water polo, like you said, it's a small world, right?
Yeah.
A lot of players, no officials, officials, no coaches. You know, you might do,
Yeah.
team X, 10 times in a season, right? And they'll say, oh my God, we've seen Alex so many times this
Yeah.
year. We've seen
Yeah.
this, official so much. So there certainly becomes a familiarity.
Hmm.
So what's your advice on how to like keep these relationships you have with coaches and other officials? How do you keep it professional? How do you remain professional, throughout the game, before or after?
Uh, right. The water polo is a small village. Everybody knows each other. Somebody played for someone or went to college to certain people and so on. Even though obviously we're all human, we like certain people, maybe not like or know as much some other people. I think that's normal, but it has to be at least look leveled on the pool deck because
Right.
I'm there to do a job. So I know that you know, if I talk to one coach, I will make an effort to go and say hello and maybe ask something and make it seen that at least I'm trying to see and get some conversation going with somebody or a new team. I don't even know who these people are, for example, and then all of a sudden so it doesn't look from outside that I'm just talking to one player and or one coach or one team. So I will say hello to both teams, even though sometimes there's only the closest benches right there, and it looks like you have to walk a long way to go to the other side, maybe to shake somebody's hand or say hello to see if there's any problems. In addition, I'll try to limit conversations during the game, especially with people I know. So and I never really liked when people call you by the first name during the game because you're there to do a job. So it looks like this person really knows me for a long time. They were calling me by my first name. They call us, "Hey, Alex, how about this?" Or yell something with Alex in it.
Right.
So and now I have to work. It makes me well. I almost feel like you have to overcompensate, but and I try not to do it. I don't do it knowingly, but I will say something to that coach. Please don't use my first name during the game. Let's keep it professional. Yeah, I'll use instead of the coach's name, I'll say coach. You know, I think that's a way that also helps to to present the game that is being leveled
Hmm.
and the perception is a lot of times is reality, as Edwin
Right.
would say,
Right.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, perception means a lot, especially in our game where we don't see a lot of things, you know.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so
So
that's one of the ways, or a couple of ways that I would use, you know,
excellent.
to manage it.
So obviously, there's relationship between you and another official, and then there's relationship between, coaches and players, and then coaches and officials, and can be challenging dealing with some coaches on certain
Mhm.
levels. What's been your experience on, maybe how to disarm a coach that might be really volatile to a certain situation? You having worked games all throughout the world, I'm sure it might be a little different, in the United States than it is in another country, but what's been like maybe your experience on some of the tools you've used to maybe disarm some of those challenging situations with coaches?
Right.
Besides the yellow card and the red card, obviously
Right.
those are
Right.
tools in your chest, right?
Yes. I'll tell you this. I mean, it might surprise you, but I think it's easier to deal with coaches internationally than nationally
Okay.
because they don't know you. Most of you, a lot of them don't know you. Some have seen you, but they don't really know you as much as our guys here. And we are not encouraged to basically deal with coaches or discussing calls with coaches or explaining ourselves. It's very simple. You get a warning, you get a yellow, you get a red.
Yeah.
It's very simple. Um, and it's not as simple in the United States. And I hope coaches realize that there's a lot of leeway first of all, there's a lot more officials in the United States. There's so many. And that's why maybe there's inconsistency administering punishment, or how the relationship works on deck during the game between various officials and coaches. So you're right. So I would have to use those kind of skills from my experience normally in the United States that I wouldn't use in internationally. So again, it depends if I'm working with a younger official or I'm on let's say a bigger games, then I know who I'm working with most of the time, right? So that would be actually very different. But the younger official, as I already began saying earlier, I would talk to the coach before the game. This is new official, or even some coaches will ask me, who is this person, or what are they doing? You know what I mean? Where are they from, or what have they done? They will ask me that. Okay, so they'll preempt me. But so I'll tell them, listen, this is a newer official. If that normally I say, if this official is on this game, because the reason coaches are asking because they're nervous.
Right.
Okay, they're already immediately not trusting you. Okay, this is not about I'm about to give you a fair chance. No, it's already not trusting you with this question, in my opinion. So I'm trying to say, listen, if this person is on this game, being assigned to this game, it means it's on that level. You know what I mean? That official is on that level. They're looking at him or her and giving her a chance, him a chance, because we need to see newer officials. Not every official has to be the same, and we cannot cover all the games, obviously. Right. So I'll start with that. Second of all, if you have any issues, ask me first before you yell across the pool, because I would normally take the coaches on that side, on the side of the benches. And I'll say, instead of starts looking ridiculous, and then when you start, 50-50 or even wrong call, you start going crazy across the pool. It just puts the whole game in kind of it becomes messy situation where I have to now babysit you a little bit, and then, but maybe sometimes I even agree with you, but you're leaving me no chance to do certain things. So I'll say, listen, if you have any issues, before you yell, ask me. If I have a radio, I'll ask that person. I'll tell you what that person saw, and maybe I will see, you and I will see something different, because a lot of times from front court, we see actually the same thing as a coach. Right. And very different what the other official does across the pool. So I'll say something like this: before yelling, ask me, okay? And you will like it or not, but I'll tell you what the official said, okay?
So you're keeping the lines of communication with the coach open instead of shutting him or her down.
Yeah.
There is a certain amount of dialogue that goes on.
It has to be, otherwise it will become and then nobody will be happy when we have to show cards and throw people out. Right. Coaches will say things in a given moment they'll regret later, or not regret, but it's gonna look ugly. So it's better to preempt this kind of situation with a newer official. I would do this. All with the more well-developed and experienced official, it will be different conversation or none, because I know, for example, that they should know. I know they know who we are and what we do. They've seen our games and the season and so on, and not only the season. So it would be very different.
Excellent. So we talked a little bit about I've been doing these chats with officials for a number of months, mm-hmm. and I got to know the answers to some of these questions, especially this next one. Is it becomes like, for mm-hmm. me personally, is you put yourself in a situation where you make a mistake on a really big game, or even if it's just a regular game.
Yeah.
You kind of get in your own head, right? And I've been there when you make a mistake and it's hard to pull yourself back into the moment, right? So mm-hmm. how do you, after you make a mistake, maybe, because we're not perfect, right? How do you bring yourself back into focus and stay present and move past that point?
Right. Well, it's really easy to make a mistake, and we all make them, obviously, sure. Even though sometimes people think it's a mistake, but from the other side, it could look completely different. Or now with the video, with the slow motion and so on, you can see things that you cannot really notice in real life, right? So we do make a mistake, but I've done different things, from the point where I say I would actually point to myself, I made a mistake. I've done that numerous times.
Right.
You know what I mean? Kind of like, I apologize, I should have known, or just happens. It looks like person lost the ball, and all of a sudden, we've all done this, blowing the whistle and the ball is in net, We all have done it, no matter who the official is, no matter. Right. And I've seen it on the highest level, Many times it happens because there's lots of pressure,
Right.
and that's.
You blow your whistle and the ball's in the back of the net, and you.
But that would be like one of the worst things that can happen. But it did happen to all of us. And if they say no, it means they either haven't refereed very much or they maybe forgot. So, so, so if I know I made a mistake, something obvious, I'll apologize. Now, fixing stuff, it's very difficult and tricky situation. I try not to do it, or because I say I don't do it because you know what, in the game, in the water polo game, I would say it's more than 9 out of 10. It's almost 10 out of 10 that things seem to even up. You will make, if you're consistent enough in doing what you're supposed to, things will even up in the game, kind of thing.
Right.
There's 50-50 things that go a certain way. You make a mistake, it doesn't mean I have to turn it over and give it to the other team. No, but some other things, somehow it all evens up. So
Right.
as long as there's a correct and fair result, you can look at yourself in the mirror
Then
after the game. That would be good. But and we know before even evaluation, we know if we made a mistake. Like officials, on a good level, officials, we know we're actually our harshest critics than the evaluators are, even though we do get evaluated all the time.
Yeah, no, those are the points. So like, I guess my listening to you talk about that is like, if you make a mistake, sometimes you physically own it and you say to yourself, you say it out loud, like, I own that.
I would point to myself, yeah.
Right. And so
Sometimes.
maybe that for you, and that's a way for you to say to yourself, okay, I'm only acknowledging that I made a mistake, but then that's a way for yourself to say, okay, now Alex, you need to move forward and forget about the mistake you just made, and then, referee the next, possession or whatever it might be.
I think that's a really good point as well. Yeah. So you don't carry it with you on your shoulders all the time.
Yeah.
That you should have known better. Or how can you, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You acknowledge, you move on. You're like literally saying it out loud to yourself.
Right.
Right.
And it's so different than in the United States when you do games, because here normally you do more than one game a day, even on a high level, right? Unless it's like NCAA finals or something,
Right.
or something like this. Even in conference finals, you can do 2 or 3 games a day.
Right.
It depends how things break down and who does what. It does happen. Internationally, you do 1 game a day or 1 game in 2 days, so you have time to relax. You prepare yourself. You're there. You're in the pool no matter what, even if you don't referee. But that day, you're still watching the team or just watching games. But internationally, you're concentrating 100% on every little thing. Everything has to be by the book, kind of thing. United States, unless you get tired, just literally tired after 4th, 5th game. Sometimes the game could be, one game could be completely easy, and then another game you think is going to be easy. All of a sudden it becomes this epic thing that you probably remember for a couple of years. You know what I mean? Or you will actually sit down and think about it. Oh my God, that was such a difficult game. I felt like I worked for for a couple hours, like physically, just lots of work, mental concentration, constantly, so you feel tired. We've done 8-10 games a day, sometimes at a really good level too, not in college, but 18 and under boys.
Yeah.
You got to watch them,
you do. Right.
Or 16s, even worse, they don't know what they're going to do sometimes,
So, Alex, what do you think obviously you've done, if you're refereeing the game, what do you think the most challenging or the toughest part of the game is to officiate, and why? Earlier you talked about center forward, and then you mentioned a lot about transition, and obviously I think that those are, in my opinion, 2 of the more challenging things. But for you, what do you think the toughest part of the game is to officiate? I guess if we're talking like really high level games.
Right. So high level games, toughest part. I know that we're judged a lot of times. We're judged on how we referee the whole set, because everybody's looking at the center. That's where the center of attention is normally. That's the most dangerous area in the pool to where to score from, and so on. And you have to be consistent in that area. I'm not saying this is most difficult though for me. I do think transition is more difficult just because a lot of times it doesn't look the same, even maybe similar move, but it's not quite the same situation. And
Right.
there's so many people moving at the same time,
Yeah, I agree with
you
that.
know, and it could be even more difficult in a women's game because there's so much more suit where honestly you can justify a lot of calls in different directions, but you have to stay consistent on what you've been called depending on the quarter, you know what I mean, and try to, you know, your most important call, probably your first call, first major call in the first quarter, and you try to stay with that level. And what's allowed, what's not allowed, you're showing everybody, hopefully with consistency and consistent calling of the same play, but not quite every play is the same way. A lot of them are similar, but not quite the same, you know. So I would say transition is probably more difficult than the set. Personally, for me, I think the set could be called even, you know, there's a time to adjust. You're standing in on deck, where you're looking at where the pass is coming from, what the kind of defense that is, and what you. But by that time, you should have a feeling what offense is trying to do, and who's
Yeah,
playing it. You know.
I agree with you with that. If someone were to ask me that question, I say the same thing. It's transition. You know, because center is like you said. There's one or two moving parts, but to transition, either, you know, if you miss for the first,
Mhm.
it can, like you said earlier, it can escalate, and that can become really challenging. So you really have to be super hyper focused, like you talked about, you know, in that transition. And I can only imagine, you know,
Mhm.
how much more physical that is, you know, when, you know, as you move up the level and you move up the
Mhm. Mhm.
chain, and, you know, men and women become stronger and faster, how
Right.
much more important that is.
And not only that, but also become more artistic. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, go ahead.
So and that also plays in the consistency. It makes it even more difficult to call it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's where I obviously experience is one thing, but then you kind of want to know who you're refereeing with,
Hmm.
you know. But a lot of times, especially internationally, a lot of times you haven't refereed with that person very much at all, if any games at all. Hopefully, you've stayed there and watched what that person is doing, but
And
and sometimes you know there's a language barrier. There's a lot of things come into play, you know.
what's that conversation like? You know, are you so you see you're working on a, you know, you're working a game internationally, right? You're
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
highest level. You've never worked with the official. You might have seen him or her
Yeah, yeah.
referee prior to it. Like is that conversation? What are those collaboration? What are those pregame? What are those in-game conversations like? Is it
Mm-hmm.
similar to what you told me before, or is it
Similar. Hopefully that person can communicate pretty well in English. There are
okay?
different levels, but most of the time people can communicate. And lately we've been using radios, and radios do help a lot. You know what I mean?
Right. So
And
in-game,
I've noticed that we
in-game.
Americans, we've been using the radios for much longer than almost anyone else in the world. Obviously we're English speakers,
Right.
so it comes easier to us. And a lot of times I've noticed that other officials are much more quiet than us, or than what we used to. United States. Now, you don't want to be constantly talking in the radio because, personally, I would lose concentration. Like, I need to know short but to the point, and a lot of times we can predict the action. That's you, take the ball, that's live. No, 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 that's he didn't put it in play. Things like that, they're very important, but that could really affect the situation, you know. So,
So you're saying
but
you're saying, sorry, that we've been in the United States, they're more ahead of the game in terms of headsets and communication.
we have, yes, we have on consistent basis. We have been using it for much longer than international events.
Okay,
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that.
And I think in big games now, I want to have radios. I feel like we're part of the team and we're together, and I feel like we're covering more, and it negates some things, even the behavior on deck. I think before you yell, oh, like, wait, I'll ask him. Or there's a timeout, I'll ask him during the appropriate time. So just wait, I'll ask him. And that actually disarms coaches a lot. I would say 9 out of 10 they would agree with this. Sometimes it doesn't work, but they'll say, "I'll ask, and I'll tell you what he said. Like, what did you see? What happened there? Okay, the ball was in hand, and so on." I'll tell you, he told me the ball was in hand. How come you asked me? He told you. You don't have to agree. I'll normally just walk away.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Kind of. It can't be a long dialogue. It looks.
Yeah.
We're
So
a very different sport than most other games where referees are talking to players and explaining things, then to coaches, looking at the video like basketball or some other, or soccer, we don't have the luxury of doing that. I think it's coming, the video part, I think,
Right.
because it did affect some those little things and time-wise and with timing and a line on, lines, maybe it will help us to decide because it affects big games. Those things can affect big games, big time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure of it. So, we talked a lot about, you working, big games, obviously, NCAA championships, and I'm sure internationally. I don't have your resume in front of you, but, can you think about some, some of your high level games you've worked, or even, it could have been a local game, whatever it might be, that one that like kind of really stands out as memorable for you, whether it was a good experience or maybe it wasn't an experience that you learned from.
I would normally say that the high level game that was very difficult to do because of the weather conditions. It was 2010 final at Cal where it was pouring rain, still full crowd in the dark, just pouring the rain. It's freezing. People think California is not cold, but it's freezing in December. And the bands are playing, cheerleaders are dancing, and dance teams, whatever. Everybody's soaked. Everybody. I saw bands are basically shaking their water out of their tubas. You know what I mean? Because there's so much water. You have no. It's difficult to see sometimes at times it's difficult to see the play,
Right.
Not because of the fog, but because of the rain. It was so hard, right? So and we went to I think sudden death overtime. So it was a long game, and then you have a plane to catch. In a couple of hours, you're in the shower for 20 minutes trying to get warm, and then plane to catch and go to work at 7 in the morning. And nobody at work knows what you've done, where you've been. Everybody just probably watched the Eagles, or something. That's the highlight. No,
There's Sunday Light.
yeah,
Sunday Light, right?
for normal people,
Yeah.
So that would be one of those games because of those combinations of things, right? And there's some interesting plays, but well-played game also. A lot of talent in the water. Another game, I'll give you two more because I thought about this. One more game I'll give you is the one that I think was a semifinal at Navy. I know you have heard of it if you haven't been there. It was at Navy. To play that game took about an hour and 45 minutes. So it was a million overtimes. I'm forgetting who won. I think Navy. I can't even remember honestly, but I just know I remember seeing MPs with their automatic guns on them on deck because somebody called them because there were not riots, but there were some issues, especially in the stands where people were getting arrested. So I think I know people are getting arrested, even the people who we threw out from the game. So people were taken away in Speedos. So imagine this. Right, I don't know if you see this. So military uniform. Yes, because that glass walk above when you remember when you're on a bulkhead, you can see the glass walk right there. So some players went there because they're not allowed on deck, and it was so full. There's so many people, people been partying and drinking, whatever. It's a big game. It was nowhere to sit. The admiral came to see the game, right? Something like this. It was a big deal. So I was seeing somebody from San Francisco, it was San Francisco Navy, somebody was getting arrested in wet Speedo, and I can see right in front of me because it's all glass. And then somebody pushed or punched the terrier from San Francisco. So that created a melee, and then I know that some fans from Navy were arrested. Right, so that became an issue because San Francisco brought a couple of buses of people to the game.
Right.
So that was definitely a very memorable thing. And I remember first thing Bob Court flew in for that game for that weekend to watch, select people for NCAA. He came up to me and another official in the room. He said, I remember he looked at me. He said, "Alex, we just had a lacrosse game with, 25,000 people there. No issues, meaning in the stands, really. We have water polo game. We have a couple of cars here, MPs or military police or somebody else came in, I don't know. And they're like literally putting people in cuffs and taking them somewhere." Wow. So that's a game to remember. So you know, it's not like we did something wrong. It's just the same. The whole environment is completely different. You know what I mean?
No, you
Then,
probably couldn't even remember who. I mean, I think I remember. I think I remember who won the game, but you don't even necessarily remember
maybe,
what
yeah.
happened in the water. It was more so just everything else that was going on.
Right, because well, even though we ask sometimes to police the deck and police what's behind the deck or above us, I think it's almost going too much. And I see the LPA actually doing a good job of stepping in and kind of like you already know what's might be coming, so somebody's be more than one person need to be there and call people out. You know what I mean?
Right.
It starts with abusive language or even before the game. You know what I mean? And you know it's gonna escalate. And you see how people behave, or there's some personal issues, and then all of a sudden it becomes a mess. An exciting game, great game, but so many things happened that you probably haven't seen. I haven't seen since maybe, but still, still it was something to remember. So it took an hour and 45 minutes, I think, to play it. You know, with all the stoppages and the red cards and the rolling, and then stopping during timeout. People, because there was so much noise up there, people were getting up and trying to protect who was getting arrested, and you know this kind of stuff. So they told me to wait, don't put the ball in play until this clears. You know what I mean? Like what?
There was a lot going on, wasn't there?
And one more, that the game that you were involved, you were not you were there, but you were not officiating. I think I was officiating with Val. It was in Chicago that the game that we didn't expect to have something during the summer. They didn't expect to be
Oh, the
extremely
National
difficult,
State Challenge.
but we both felt we were really challenged in that game.
Oh, that was
What a game that was!
the boys' championship game, right?
Yeah, that was a championship game. Also, it was kind of in the basement. It was a
18 on the
Fenwick.
boys' championship. Yeah, I
So
think
many
it was,
people.
maybe the 2016 or 17. Yeah, it was at Fenwick, right?
Fenwick. So
Yeah, it
again,
was a really
hot,
good game.
humid people and smaller pool.
Yep.
I felt challenged in that game because first of all, I didn't expect, because I've seen this game, these teams for 2 days before that.
Right.
And all of a sudden it felt like it became personal at the first whistle. It's not like we didn't call enough. We called what, 30 something, 40 personal fouls, cards without waiting, nothing. You know, I'm thinking, I remember I told you, Damon, if somebody, I was thinking like, what if somebody else would be doing this game and you kind of just didn't react immediately on certain things that were happening? And I thought, like, you know what, we might not finish this game.
Right.
You see, it means a lot when two Chicago teams may be playing, and there were two Chicago teams. There's something was before the game, obviously something there.
Yeah, that was
in the water.
Yeah, a lot of those. I think a lot of those. From what the story I remember was that was Chicago Parks. I think then it was Windy City. A lot of those kids play on each other's teams. There was a lot
Is that
of
what happens?
Those kids are probably growing up playing against each other, right?
Constantly, and parents, and
Yeah.
it was. I remember it was the last game, and I felt like, oh my god, I was challenged. I was really challenged in this game.
Yeah.
The whole situation. So that was the third one for you.
Yeah. All right. Excellent.
And it's American water polo game, in fact.
Yeah, that was actually a more memorable final if I remember. That was
High scoring. Nobody got injured, but high scoring. A lot of things. But you got to watch literally every inch of the water, and it's like murky water. It's just right. It's kind of like this. I don't know.
That's funny. Well, one last question, Alex. Looking back on your first couple games you probably refereed, and having the knowledge and experience you have now from international play and domestic play here, what would be some of your pointers you would give? I guess some of the things to do, some of the things that don't do to like maybe a younger version of yourself.
Mm-hmm. It's a question I'm asked a lot, and I'm glad that you have asked me, because we don't have enough good games to get good.
Right. And
that's why it's such a good question. And I do talk about this with younger officials, less experienced officials all the time. It's when you're not on the game and you're there to officiate, you should be watching the game. But the keys here is to watch it as an official and not as a player or spectator or coach. This is a completely different view or way to watch the game, unless you push yourself to do this, and then you get used to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would even more helpful if you could actually move with certain official. You want to watch, you think, you know what, I like what he or she does. I want to understand what she or he calling, and from that certain position, maybe even change. If there's room on deck, just go and change that position as well. I want to learn from this person maybe how he or she call in the front court, for example. Why is he on the goal line instead of a 5-meter line? You know what I mean? Things like that. Or what was that call? How did he see that push off? Or why did he let that push off go? You know what I mean? There's some things that we're not calling everything, obviously. Otherwise, we would not have a game. That's what makes this so challenging. So I would say be available and get ready for opportunity to strike. So it looks like you're ready to take advantage of that opportunity. And second of all, when you go into a bigger event, try to see what other officials that you respect and would like to learn from, what are they doing, like, and just body language, pool positioning, whistling, and how they whistle, and maybe and how they deal with opposing coaches on deck. That's a lot too, because it's very inconsistent as well, I feel like, in the United States, because it's not as simple as international water polo, where we're encouraged to not talk to people, really. I mean, we're just there to implement the rules, and we're not there to discuss them. Here, we got to give you a rope a little bit, even though the rope, it looks like we're giving a lot of rope, and then it's been cut in half by the first month, and then cut more because coaches do take advantage of it, and it's they're allowed to, because they're trying to win the game. They have so much invested in the result, a lot more than us. We're not invested in result, I would hope. Otherwise, you probably shouldn't referee.
Right. You're invested.
We're there. I will say, like, nothing personal. It's not because I like the other team better than you, or I just don't like your team. It's just sometimes it happens, or sometimes a couple of calls in a row happen against you. It does happen, but it has a tendency to even up. So for the younger officials, be available, learn, and don't take things personal. Don't get discouraged. Give it a chance. You know what I mean? Maybe try a second time, third time.
Those are some great pieces of advice, Alex. And I think about myself as doing officiating, and it's like, and I've looked at you and I say, okay, I really like the way Alex calls a timeout, right? Or, I'm going to adopt that, or I think I remember, maybe it was you that I had, it only takes a couple times to move yourself down to the goal line to where, because you missed the goal, you're too far away from the goal, right? Or you call it in, and was it in? Was it not in? So now you're one step away from the goal line instead of being 3 or 4. I remember talking to you about that. It's like, hey, where do you stand? When you're the attacking referee. So you need to be in position and say, okay, you know what? I see he or she is doing it this way. I'm gonna try to adopt that, because it works for them, and they've done a really good job. So I think those are really great pieces of advice.
Thanks, Damon. We have a choice to move down, because it happens all the time in the game where you have to referee your front court, and front court, everybody's looking at you and at the center of attention, which is the center normally, and that you are responsible for. But and I will take explanation that actually borrow from Jack Horton, who said, like, well, we have so many lines in water polo, you have to decide which one is more important. And actually, the goal line is the most important line. Right. If we don't have a goal judge, it's goal or no goal. You know what I mean? That's what the teams are playing for. You know what I mean? Yeah. Inside 5, outside the 5, or now 6. It's changing now. You can ask for help from your partner. Maybe partner can step in and help. And maybe hopefully you have discussed that with your partner, that this is where I'm standing. I will need help if it's close. Let me know. Yes, just point yes or no. But you're there at the goal line. Nobody can say, listen, it wasn't in. In my opinion, I will say, in my opinion, it was in. Right. My opinion could be wrong, but in my opinion, that's in. Yeah. Or out. It wasn't the goal.
Yeah. That's a great line from Jack.
There's so many lines, and I chose this one as the most important. We can't be everywhere.
No, that's really true. Hey, Alex, I really appreciate you taking the time. As always, check out some other videos at AmericanWaterPolo.org. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram for other interviews and educational resources. It's been great catching up, and I appreciate it. Thanks, Alex.
Likewise, Damon. It was great seeing you again, and hopefully I'll see you on the deck sometime soon.